Pokemon Go Fest New York. That happened earlier this month, and I was able to go. For the most part, it was a good time. My shiny luck was absolutely incredible. I walked out of the weekend with a grand total of 107 shinies, and I'm pretty sure I could have gotten more if I wasn't so tired by Sunday that I just sat in my hotel room catching random stuff from my bed while watching Shark Tank reruns. Absolutely not complaining about that part. What I will complain about, though, were those cheap park decorations. Who was in charge of that? Like, I'm not expecting anything fancy, but I expected some effort. The game has been siphoning money out of the community for years now, except now it's far more blatant with every event having some kind of price tag attached to it, and y'all couldn't even be bothered to make anything look halfway decent? I mean, look at this Brilliant Skies habitat. Look at it. What is this? Why did y'all put this at the edge of a parking lot? Did nobody look at this and say, yeah, that's pretty tacky, maybe we should do literally anything else? And why was there nothing else in this area? Poolside Cabana is exempt from this mini rant, as it was the true MVP of the weekend, as it was the only place that had life-saving misting fans to help combat the heat and humidity. Truly, those fans were the goats of GoFest. Originally, this rant was going to be longer, but that's not the point or purpose of this video. This video is going to be long enough as it is with the number of designs I have, and I don't need to make it any longer with long-winded rants. My main gripe with the habitats was that I was hoping to get some inspiration from them for the actual topic of today's video, Fakemon based on the costume Pikachus and Eevees of GoFest. More specifically, the goal is to create evolutions for each of them based on either the sun or moon themed crowns they were wearing and the habitats they could be found in. In total, there were 4 habitats. Ghostly Woods and Rugged Quarry housed the moon crown Pokemon, while Brilliant Skies and Poolside Cabana housed the sun crown ones. Unfortunately for me, the quality of the decorations were so poor that I got absolutely no inspiration from the habitats themselves. Instead, my inspiration is coming from the habitat names and the other types of Pokemon that could be found in them. So I focus more on the sun-moon aspect over the crown thing. And I know I said I'd never make another video with more than 6 new designs in it, but just know that I lied. So let's start with the one habitat that was the bane of my existence for this trip, the lackluster Brilliant Skies. This was where I was hoping to get the most inspiration because honestly, it was lacking. Both the Sun Crown Pikachu and Eevee were in this habitat. Now Eevee was the easier of the two to come up with the concept for. You can basically do anything with Eevee and make it make sense so long as it maintains some of the basic design traits shared by the Eeveelutions. Stuff like eye shape, a sort of cat, rabbit, fox aesthetic, body and face shape, you get it. So naturally, this is where I started. This habitat predictably had mostly flying types, so while my goal originally was to base my design off the habitat itself, that didn't work out. Instead, I decided to interpret Brilliant Skies as bright, clear, sunny skies, and tried my best to make these evolutions feel like they fit in among the rest of the Pokemon that spawn there. So, if Eevee evolved in the Brilliant Skies habitat with the Sun Crown, then we have Suzakion, the Fire Wing Pokemon, a fire and flying type. The name comes from the Suzaku, a phoenix-like creature in Chinese folklore. I knew I wanted this to be a fire flying type, so I went with the phoenix as inspiration. You know, like most of the fire flying types. It was tough not giving this more details. I think I wanted to add more feathering on the front legs, but it wasn't really necessary. I got a little more daring with the back legs. I opted to give it bird-like back feet, which gives this a griffin look. It was unintentional, but I liked the outcome. I tried to give the face a sun feel with the feathers and ear wings. Not every design will incorporate a sun or moon motif, but some will. I also made the face markings mimic the look of a beak. And because this is mimicking the look of a phoenix, I wanted to keep a red, yellow, orange, fiery color scheme. But the shiny, that's where this thing really, well, shines. When it comes to making shinies, I try to design ones that I would want to hunt. So I want to make the color scheme exciting or beautiful, or at the very least, stand out from the original to some degree. I knew I wanted to have blue flames, but the rest of this was just messing with colors and seeing what looked good, and this turned out so gorgeous. Not to toot my own horn, but if this was real, I would absolutely be shiny hunting this. Now if Pikachu evolved in the Brilliant Skies habitat with the Sun Crown, then we'd have Metachu, the high jump Pokemon, an electric and fire type. The name comes from Meta, the Japanese onomatopoeia for fire crackling, and Chu, the onomatopoeia for the sounds mice make. Out of every design, this is the one where I really wanted to get some inspiration from the park, but literally the park had nothing, so I had to completely wing this. In terms of types, evolving Pikachu into something other than Raichu is a little rough. I'm not trying to make a regional variant of Raichu, I'm trying to make something that isn't Raichu that Pikachu could reasonably evolve into. This also limits the types I can use because, at least to me, it's obvious that it should stay an electric type. I was between fire and flying on the secondary type. While it would lend to a more literal interpretation of Brilliant Skies, I didn't think a flying type made sense for a Pikachu Evo, so fire it was. This time, I ended up using the Jerboa as my animal base. I just started thinking of the idea of jumping high being sort of a stand-in for flying. In reading about Jerboas, I learned they can jump up to 10 feet, which for an animal of their size is wild. It being a Jerboa also made sense with it being a fire type, as Jerboas are desert animals. Ground type would also work, but deserts are known for being hot, so fire type. Once I landed on it being a Jerboa-based design, the idea started to flow. It ended up looking fairly similar to Raichu, but also different enough that I think I could consider it its own Pokemon instead of purely a Raichu clone. The fluff on the end of the tail mimics clouds, and I imagine the cloud colors change with its mood. The lightning bolt aesthetic is reserved for the markings on the back and chest, but the colors are definitely close to both shiny Raichu and Alolan Raichu, but tinted a little more red. I just liked them that way, but I promise the other designs won't look nearly as much like Raichu. Now that Brilliant Skies are out of the way, it's time to move to the Ghostly Woods. It's pretty self-explanatory what sort of Pokemon are found here. Ghosts. And a few dark types and bugs. And Lunatone, but that's only 'cause it's a moon. So once again, starting with the evolution, Eevee with the moon crown evolves into Familirion, the Catshi Pokemon, a ghost and fairy type. Like the classification states, it's based on the Catshi, a type of fairy from Scottish folklore that's said to be a large black cat with a white spot on its chest. The name is from the term familiar, as black cats are predominantly depicted as witches' companions, and Catshi are said to possibly be witches themselves. I think I heard about the Catshi in passing before, either through skimming through stuff about other mythological creatures previously, or through other fandom-based media, but I never really knew what Catshi were. Once I learned, it was obvious what I had to do. The most difficult part was the design itself. A Catshi is pretty bare bones in what it looks like. Black cat, white chest spot, and looking up artistic depictions of them are all pretty similar. On the forehead, I added some markings that are a simplified, stylized version of the moon phases chart. I tried adding in half moons and it just made the face look too cluttered, so I stuck to full and crescents. And along the back are stripes that not only look a bit like ribs, but also allude to the stripes of Scottish wildcats, which Catshis are said to be based on. The tail is just all wispy because ghost. Also because I like it. This one's definitely the most simplified design of the video. I took a lot of inspiration from Umbreon in its simple two-color design. A lot of the earlier evolutions weren't super detailed or only had about 2 or 3 colors to their name, and I think Familirion would fit in very well amongst them. And as for Pikachu evolving with the moon crown in the Ghostly Woods, we'd have Irachu, the irate Pokemon, an electric and dark type. The name comes from the onomatopoeia ira, which is an expression of irritation or frustration. While designing this, I considered making it an electric poison type. There was a Pika clone I'd made for Faketober last year that was based on the maned or African crested rat, which is a species of rodent whose fur is poisonous, and to some extent I used it alongside domesticated rats as an inspiration for this design with the spiky fur. It worked perfectly for the electric typing. I wasn't completely sure of what I wanted to do with these colors originally. I felt like I needed to pull some inspiration from Pikachu's color scheme, or else how would you know it evolved from Pikachu? The shiny colors though are based off the previous Pika clone, just minus the purple. I really liked that color scheme and wanted to use it again. This could either be a spiritual successor or a redesign of that Pika clone. Now that the ghostly woods are done, it's time to relax and wind down by the Poolside Cabana. Eevee with the sun crown evolves into Neredion, the playful Pokemon, a water and psychic type. The name comes from the Nereides, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, of Greek mythology, who, according to Wikipedia, are sea nymphs that symbolize the beauty of the sea. To start, I looked up animals that were associated with psychic abilities. It wasn't shocking to see cats up there since they're associated with witches and spirits. Dolphins though were news to me. But people have this belief or theory that they can communicate telepathically, so that makes sense. I wanted to see if I could incorporate some dolphin traits into this design, which I did with the tail and the forehead. I tried giving this a dorsal fin, but it didn't flow with the rest of the design. The real test was making this look different from Vaporeon. I went for koi-like markings. I wanted the pattern to be a bit wavy and psychedelic because psychic type. And the pattern on the forehead I wanted to resemble a third eye. Color-wise, I just wanted this to be bright and playful, something to match the pose and expression I gave it. Overall though, I just really love how this one turned out. It's one of those I struggled with the most, but once I kind of figured out what I wanted to do and the color palette I wanted, it all worked out. And Pikachu with the sun crown evolves into Bashachu, the Aqua Mouse Pokemon, an electric and water type. The name comes from Bashan, the onomatopoeia for splashing. Just like all the Pikachu Evos, this one was also pretty tough. Finding a base of where to start was key. I started with looking up aquatic rodents and decided on the water vole as the main inspiration because I wanted this to be a cute mousy guy that swims. I'll admit this is the one design that I think isn't as strong as the rest. I think this would be fine if it were a standalone Pika clone, but as an evolution to Pikachu, I can admit it falls short. In the future, I'd consider redesigning this one to make it read more like a water vole, a water type, and an evolution to Pikachu, rather than a generic Pika clone. The one thing I really wanted to add that I couldn't get to look right were rounder parts on its body that kind of resemble pool floaties, or maybe the whole Pokemon could resemble some kind of pool toy. Who knows? That's a problem for future Sombra to figure out. I do think that if I had figured this out earlier, this design would have been stronger. And last but certainly not least, we have the rugged Quarry. This is where you found most of the rock and ground type Pokemon, and Sableye because it eats gems. So I think it goes without saying that these evolutions are going to be rock or ground based. Also, rock types are the hardest for me to design right now. A lot of rock types tend to have rocks as part of their bodies or look very rocky or scaly, and that's not really something I draw a lot. So this is decent practice. Anyways, Eevee with the moon crown evolves into Terrarion, the camouflage Pokemon, a rock and ground type. The name comes from Terra, the Roman goddess and personification of the earth, and also terrarium. I based this off of a snow leopard. There's obviously plenty of cats I could have used that are desert dwelling, but I wanted to use an animal that lived in rocky terrain. And at this point my tired mind only came up with snow leopard. I just wanted an evolution that was a bit bulkier in stature. I wanted the long tail and I wanted to turn some of the spots and stripes into the rocks on its body. I'm torn on how much I like this. For my skill level with this Pokemon typing, I think I did okay, and I like the general idea of this, but I think the rendering is where this falls short. I think I expected that though because I'm not very familiar with drawing rocky surfaces, but I think this absolutely looks like a Pokemon that would live in a rugged quarry or in rugged terrain in general, so in that sense I succeeded. If I messed a little bit more with the proportions so it looked more similar to the other evolutions, I think this would have sat better with me. And lastly, if Pikachu with the moon crown evolved in the rugged quarry, we'd have Zarachu, the Axe-tail Pokemon, an electric and rock type. The name comes from the onomatopoeia zara zara, which is indicative of rough texture, though from the context I read it doesn't seem to necessarily be speaking of the ground or earth, but it doesn't seem to exclude that either. Once again, I just sort of looked for rodents that lived in rocky terrain and sort of settled on the rock hyrax. I just like their square, bulky stature and the small tusks they have, though in this case I inverted the tusks because I just wanted this guy to look wild and primal. The tail is very reminiscent of Raichu's in shape, but the tip is meant to look more like a pickaxe. This thing could be working in the quarry itself, helping to break and dislodge stone with its tail. This is another one where I'm happy with the idea, but not the actual execution. So this, along with Terrarion and Bashachu, could potentially be redesigned at a later date. And with that, we're at the end of these designs. A big part of why I wanted to make this video was just that I've been trying to mix Pokemon Go with art for a while now. If you go back a year or two, you'll see some small videos where I was just drawing the stuff I was rating or making community day art, and I still think those are nice, but it wasn't like a good way to mix the two together, you know? And as much as I complain about Pokemon Go, I do like the game overall. I've met new people and made good friends while playing it. I've got fun stories surrounding my experiences playing the game. I just complain because I can see where the game could be so much better, and it's honestly sad to see how much it's changed over time. I originally wrote this script with much more ranting up front and just decided against it, though if you would like to hear all of that, let me know. Otherwise, it's a discussion that'll stay between me and my friends. In the end, I just wanted to see if I could represent some part of the game with Fakemon. While I can't judge if I was successful with it or not, this was still fun to do. I'm halfway tempted to evolve other costume Pokemon that have been in the games. Maybe not all of them, but like some of them. Preferably the ones that aren't in like full costumes. Like the Pikachu wearing Mimikyu's costume wouldn't really make sense, but evolving the Straw Hat Pikachu could. If you guys want to see something like that, let me know in the comments. But that's it for now. Which one of these evolutions do you like? Let me know. And as always, you can keep up with my art on any of my socials listed here and linked below. And that's it. I'll see you next month for something far less stressful. Hopefully.